Hey everyone, it's Mandy, and I hopefully have an answer or part of an answer to one of the million-dollar questions in education. How do we efficiently and effectively analyze and respond to the results of our common assessments? After all, we have a lot going on. We have lesson plans to write, data to collect, materials to gather, bulletin boards to create, meetings to attend, tutoring to hold, lots and lots of things. The list goes on, all while trying to hopefully maintain some sort of work life balance. How can we ever manage it all? Then, to top it all off, you might actually feel like you're experiencing this scene from Bruce Almighty.
This last entry was a little disturbing.
How many of us have ever felt like Bruce Almighty, where the file cabinet is overflowing with student results, but we're not really doing anything effectively with it? Maybe we have all the information, but we don't ever make an instructional plan. So it could be that we have all this data, but what do we do with it? So in the book Design in Five, the road to analyzing student assessment is traveled through a method called the pile, stack, and planned, and that's shared as an answer to that million-dollar question. I will be reviewing the main points of this method, so let's get started. A couple of talking points to start. There are two keywords prevalent in that million-dollar question: efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency is identified as data frequently collected with the intention to respond. Too often, though, the end result is that educators have an intimate understanding of what needs to work, or I'm sorry, what needs work, but don't spend the time or resources to address it. In a nutshell, we keep assessing, but we don't stop to respond. Teachers and students often feel like they are constantly being assessed with no time to slow down and learn. Sound familiar at all? If we intend to use assessment to inform instruction, involve students, and improve achievement, just assessing more isn't going to do it. It just adds loads of paperwork to the already overwhelming role of the teacher. Can I get an amen? To be effective, an assessment must help students in their understanding and improve their achievement and confidence. The connectedness in learning for students centers around their performance and the link to the instructional activity. Time provided for students to take feedback, whether it be asking students to review and fix their mistakes or to use comments to improve their work, is a step which often gets overlooked due to time and lack of planning. Now that we've talked and elaborated on efficiency and effectiveness, we need to transition to the pile, stack, and plan method. In short, the teacher teams, or PLCs, take a pile of student work, create stacks according to student understanding, common mistake, or misconception, design an instructional plan to meet students where they are in their understanding. The process should take 30 to 40 minutes, although the first few times may take longer as teams explore this way of talking about student work. And I think they're addressing actually the first two, the pile and stack. The planning might take longer than that 30 to 40 minutes. So when we're doing that, I don't know about you, but maybe it's just me. Hopefully it was just me. But I've had a few PLC meetings where a good chunk of time was spent just working to figure out what to make of our students' assessment performance. We'd spend all of our time talking, or maybe even you might call it venting, about the assessment and the performance. However, no plan was really created on what to do to fix the issue. We get back to our room, we would have met for our hour and a half, and we had no plan of instructional strategies. We weren't any better off than when we started. Hopefully that's just me and my experience, but if it happens to ring true for you, I think this quick intentional sort and stack frees time to create the instructional plan to grow your students. With the additional resources provided in this module to help guide conversations, collaboration, and planning, we hope you'll find your PLC time more focused and beneficial for you, and most importantly, your students. Planning new ways to help students understand is where tapping into the expertise of colleagues and sharing resources can be incredibly valuable. What might the driving questions be as you work through the process of instructional planning using the data from the pile, stack, and plan method? First, you must answer the question, what do we learn from the data? Bring the student assessments and data to your meeting to analyze and dig deeper to determine which and what if each student needs. By identifying your students' overall learning strengths and challenges, you'll have an accurate picture of where they are in the learning process and then, of course, where they need to go. By piling and stacking, you have the option to group the students by misunderstandings and provide a differentiated learning experience. The other question is, how do you respond to the data? Using the instructional response sheet can help guide the responses to your students' performance on the assessment. A possible example surrounds the idea of meeting students where they are, identifying student strengths, and then what they need to work on. I'm going to read to you an example very quickly on a middle school math team. They reviewed a quiz involving 4 problems on identifying slope and y-intercept. This is taken from the book, but I thought it was a great example illustrating this method. They stacked all the students who accurately identified slope and y-intercept into one pile. Another pile contained students who could identify slope and y-intercept except when negative numbers were involved. The final pile held those who identified them all incorrectly. The team planned a 20-minute station for each group to occur the following day in each of their classrooms. Each station had an agenda that the teachers created based upon how the students performed on the assessment. Another example, for instance, would be a second grade team. They're doing coins and money. So the first group, they might have only had 1 or 2 kids, and they struggled to identify the coins and their amounts. Those students could work at a computer and watch a video describing through song the different coin amounts. They worked together to fix and revise their work on the actual quiz. The second group identified coins and their amounts. They needed to work on adding. These students played a game in which they practiced adding coins. They went back and fixed their errors after playing the game for about 15 minutes. And the final group performed well on all parts of the assessment. Their biggest struggle, though, was being able to explain their thinking. So this group also played a game, but it also involved using what they knew about coins to solve problems posed on cards. And then having those students articulate or put into a video their thinking or make a tutorial or some sort of explanation video would be great for them to challenge those upper performers. Let's see. If a student has multiple areas of need, choose one most significant to make it more manageable for the student. Then as he or she progresses, add additional areas as needed. A couple of things to make sure you consider are the possible resources that are available. Technology, of course, that's a tool which we know can empower learning and student investment. Perhaps the group of kids who perform well on the assessment but need the little extra push with explaining their answers could work on a podcast or video tutorial like I mentioned earlier. Others could be working in a small group with a teacher, and another group could be working through an interactive digital site. So leveraging that technology to provide some differentiation within your classroom. Lastly, the classroom culture also needs to be a consideration. Has a culture of collaboration been built within your classroom? How comfortable do students feel making mistakes and addressing them, sharing their learning or work, getting feedback and using it to improve? These are all considerations which need to be taken into consideration and work to build that classroom culture where student empowerment and student ownership, but also sharing and collaboration and risk taking is promoted. So the next thing I want to go over is the instructional response planning form. The book actually highlights that 1/3 of the time is spent analyzing the data, the pile and stack, and that's where we as a PLC in my prior teaching job would get a little stuck. And then the 2/3 of the time, which we didn't get to, is spent on the actual instruction response. That's the plan. So this handout that's centered in the middle of the road is actually taken from the Design in 5 book, and it's included in the module. It is actually a clickable PDF, so you'll be able to click in here and write. You will need to download and then use it as you will. So I think it could be very beneficial in your PLC times or in your own little classroom world planning for your instructional response. Another additional resource is the pile, stack, and plan method. I gave you the shortened Cliff Notes condensed version. This Google Doc I just took straight from the book and credited them, but it actually outlines 8 questions that help guide you through the actual process. It provides some quality questions and some great steps. Please not refuse, refer to this resource as you begin to work through this method. It's also included in the module under this pile, stack, and plan phase. So the final thoughts. Assessment and collaboration has great potential to empower educators and help them grow in their own practice, as well as contribute to the overall success of a school, team, and classroom. It is one of the most significant professional learning practices in which educators can engage. That's a direct quote taken from the book Design in 5. As you've worked nearly through this whole entire module, Assessments in a Standards-Based Grading World, we really hope that you are able to identify some areas and some different instructional plans for you to improve how you're responding to assessments in your classroom, providing that opportunity for empowerment, that student ownership piece, that collaboration piece, and then being intentional with our instructional response to our assessment. Those are key things that we need to take into consideration. As we work through this, hopefully feel a bit more like Bruce Almighty does now than in the beginning of the slideshow.